I recall that once I was in a meeting with the folks of Hugging Face and my customers as well, and they shared a phrase which actually is very true, where they say models are a cost, data is an investment.
Meet Jorge, a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services, AWS, born in Peru, now based in Munich, Germany. Jorge's profound expertise stems from a solid educational foundation. He holds a Master of Science in Data Science and Artificial Intelligence from the University of London and a master degree in management from EBC Hochschule Berlin, University of Applied Sciences. At AWS, Jorge specializes in leveraging advanced AI and cloud technologies to drive digital transformation for startups and enterprises alike. His role involves deploying generative AI applications that empower companies to innovate and excel in the competitive tech landscape. Jorge was recently a featured speaker in the current spring batch of the StudioAlpha Accelerator. This is rolled in StudioAlpha's platform for podcasts, blogs, and events. I'm Fabian. Welcome. Many people became significantly more aware of the capabilities of generative AI with the launch of ChatGPT in December 22. Can you give us some backdrop about Amazon and his positioning in the AI space, or in other terms, what are the foundational steps that contributed to this strong standing of Amazon in the AI technology?
Sure. At its core, it's important to note that Amazon actually is an ML AI-driven company as well. Amazon and AWS together, we've been working on the AI and ML space for more than 20 years. So it's part of our heritage ethos. And for example, I can mention a few use cases we started internally. Our e-commerce recommendation engine is highly driven by ML as well. In our, for example, warehouses as well, where you see different robots, for example, supporting the supply chain as well, driven by ML as well. When we talk about, for example, NLP as well, natural language processing as well, Alexa is powered by more than 30 different ML systems as well. And this helps customers of billions of let's say, times every week as well, to manage their homes, shops, get information, entertainment, and more as well. And this is reflected, for example, on the solutions we offer at AWS as well, because based on those 20 years of experience we have made on AI as well, AWS is helping enterprise startups especially as well to unlock the value of their data with AI across every line of business as well.
Okay, so Jorge, so you were talking about the past of Amazon and the space AI. So can you explain now what Amazon is doing in the generative AI? Companies across all industry are discussing AI implementation. There's also, like, in the communication, they push that. And between the lines, it feels like they're also kind of concerned that they are not getting disrupted by the startups. So talking about startups, what does AWS doing by democratizing access for these startups to generative AI?
So that's a very interesting question, and that's actually something we see. We as end users on the news every day. You have companies trying to catch up on their product AI strategy as well. Here at AWS, for as well, is something that we have increasing number of, let's say, requests for solution services guidance for companies and many startups, for example, to ask, for example, how to get started as well. And we see that more and more companies of every size, they're doubling down the efforts they have made on AI as well. Some others are, for example, already taking the experiments they made as well into production as well. And some other are just getting started as well, just exploring, for example, use cases, building their capabilities. And as you mentioned, I different, for example, I mentioned three different type of like customers: those who already are doubling down on effort on AI, those who are like taking the experiments into production as well, and those who are just getting started and do not even have the capabilities for AI. And that's, for example, AWS offers them like solutions as well in all those different stages as well.
Could you show some key applications that particularly are transformative in general?
Sure. Let me just like pull out some examples because I think it's going to be much easier for the audience to see this visually. Just give me 1 second. So when we talk about generative AI use cases or common use cases, most of the use cases can be grouped in these three different buckets or categories you see here as well. First, for example, we see our customers creating or enhancing customer experience as well by using generative AI, for example, to reinvent the way they interact with their customers as well. The second bucket is related to your employees itself, because we see companies using generative AI to boost their employee productivity and creativity as well. And the third, let's say, bucket of use cases is related to, for example, internal processes as well and how leverage generative AI to drive higher efficiencies as well. When let's say, when we talk about specific use cases, I could mention, or you can actually see a few of them here as well. When we talk about enhancing customer experience, for example, we see companies, let's say, developing chatbots or virtual assistants that are 24/7 there to enrich customer experience and actually take it to the next level as well. Because these bots are trained or leverage the company's own data as well. When we talk about, for example, boosting employee productivity as well, relates to the fact that your employees can not only analyze or extract meaningful information from extensive documentation in a couple of seconds, but also AI-based code generation tools, for example, allow developers to generate and review code with human descriptions only. And this can boost their productivity up to 50% in some cases as well. And the list that you see here as well, of course, is not extensive. It's related to the first use cases we see across, let's say, companies as well. And when we see, for example, this across industries as well, and how, like, for example, generative AI is applied across different verticals as well, we see very, very interesting cases as well. For example, in the healthcare and life science industry as well. In the healthcare and life science space as well, we can mention medical imaging, for example, because I'm working with a startup who, for example, use generative AI models to, for example, reconstruct or even generate new medical images, such as X-rays, MRIs, or CT scans as well, which can actually eventually help to better diagnosis. When we talk about financial services, how like companies are leveraging generative AI for this industry, for an industry as well, we see companies, for example, using generative AI to create highly tailored investment strategies. I've seen, for example, some insurtech startups using generative AI to improve processes such as claim management, for example, where a Gen AI application can extract relevant information from documents, summarize claims histories as well, and identify potential inconsistencies or fraudulent claims as well. And while I could, let's say, spend hours about like talking about the use cases as well, there are a few things I would like to share with the audience as well. When we talk about, for example, okay, this use cases looks amazing, but how do I get started? I mean, how as a startup, I have one idea. What are the things I should have in mind, for example?
These cases for startups, they often come up with a business model, for instance. So they have just like this idea because they come out of one of these spaces. But now the crucial point is what factors should they consider mainly in terms of balancing the business value and the implementation speed. You showed a nice slides during the accelerator speech.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. And actually, that's as I mentioned that time, if there's any, let's say, key takeaway I want your audience to take from this conversation is the ones that I'm going to show now as well. Because before you as a startup you can successfully adopt generative AI in your organization, is it is important to determine where and how you can apply the technology for the greatest impact as well. In other words, is that you need to select the right generative AI use case for you, for your customers. And this, of course, is not an easy task. It requires the consideration of several factors as well. Here in the example I'm going to show you, I try to boil down those several factors into two main things as well, so you don't get overwhelmed. The first one is related that you need to find the optimal balance between business value and speed. Because let's say that the proof of concept, an internal experiment or pilot with no real business value, it won't really move the needle in your company as well. Furthermore, not to lose momentum, you want to find something, a use case that you can deliver at speed. And whether that means a few weeks, in the best case, a few months, but not more than that. Because this is particularly true for AI startups or AI-driven startups as well, because the space changes so fast. So let's say that a good way to get started, you say, okay, where can I start? You already have some ideas in mind of the use cases where you could implement generative AI. Is by picking a use case that may not yield at the beginning the greatest business value, which usually translates into lower risk as well. But it's a use case that you can deliver quick, in the sense that you can fail fast, because eventually you're going to fail. It's actually good that you make the learning as well. So you fail fast and learn even faster. So once you have made those learnings, you have gotten familiar with generative AI systems as well. You know, for example, what's the best model for your use case. You know how to, for example, build a specific data transformation pipeline as well. Once you get it, let's say you find yourself in a, let's say, comfortable place as well around those technologies, you can move into more high, let's say, profile use cases as well. And a practical example I can give here is that I had a customer who wanted to implement a chatbot, driven by generative AI with an intelligent retrieval system for their end user. So basically, they want to leverage their internal knowledge for to answer, for example, customer queries as well. And that's something that they want to implement for their customers. But before they even get started implementing this, they went for a lower risk project, and it's basically something similar. So they implemented a similar chatbot, but for their internal user, for internal use as first. So it's, let's say, a lower risk project as well. And after successfully, let's say, getting familiar with that, let's say, technology, launching the pilot, meeting the specific requirements that they have, they took those learnings and actually took that chatbot to for their end users as well and into production as well. So that's the first part I would like you to take into account when finding the best use case.
So basically, you go with like a MVP. You go live and you test it, and then you take it from there and you optimize stepwise.
Exactly. That's exactly that way. As mentioned, just started something low risk, but that you can estimate that you can still deliver it at speed. As mentioned, like within a few weeks or months at latest as well, but not more than that as well. So you can iterate faster, because it's pretty likely that you won't get it right the first time as well. So if you're like in a, let's say, safe environment for your engineers to like experiment with different models, that's what's going to help you, let's say, get those learnings as well. And the second point you should have into consideration as well is that you want to find a use case that will leverage your existing data to create unique value for your customer, for your startup as well. We see that generative AI application, like say the value it brings to your business, it grows much more when those foundational models, let's say, powering those generative AI application are customized or are leveraging your own data as well. And that's where the real competitive edge is going to be on you. I mean, the competitive advantage you're going to have, it won't be on just embedding a, like, let's say, powerful model into your application, because I mean, that model in 1 or 2 weeks, you're going to find there's going to be a much more performing model as well. So that shouldn't be your competitive advantage unless you are in that business as well. So your competitive edge is going to be on using those models in combination with your existing data as well. Because I mean, as many people say, data is gold in this sense. And the best way to satisfied or meet these two criteria I just showed you as well, is to ensure that, let's say, the technical experts and the domain experts are working hand in hand in your organization on in your generative AI project. So the technical experts, they can conduct feasibility assessment in the sense that, I don't know, maybe if we want to implement this, it's going to take us like 2, 3, 4 weeks as well. And that's the opinion they can bring here. And the domain experts are the ones who are going to ensure that the solution or the problem you're solving is actually of business value for you or for your company. It's going to bring like a real impact as well.
Okay, so when you talk about this own data, that sounds like, the deployment. How do you deploy this? I mean, when you have your own data, you have then to maintain this database, you have the storage, and you have this, all these analytics running on over this database, the data lake, so called. So, can you elaborate more about how the startup then basically deploys their solution into your platform?
Sure. For that, I think I can have like a very good example. Let me try to find it. We work with a lot of customers, and I see across my customers as well that when they think about, okay, generative AI, um, they tend to pay too much attention, as I just mentioned, on what's the model they're going to leverage for the generative AI application. And I believe it's understandable as well. But when you see generative AI and you only think about the foundational model powering that application, I mean, the model is just the tip of the iceberg. Because what really enables you, and what really derives value on the generative AI application is going to be your own data. So
So
generative
there's
AI,
the second part, the right part of your previous slide.
exactly, exactly. So that's what I wanted to. And actually, that's what I want to, let's say, get a little bit deeper on this topic because that's one of the areas where we see like startups struggle as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they spend too much time trying to find the best model. And to be honest, it's difficult. I mean, the space moves at such speed as well. It's really difficult, let's say, to catch up and to have like a good understanding. Okay, what's the best model out there? Because in many cases, the best model out there may not be the best or the best fit for your use case. You don't need, in many use cases, you don't need the most powerful with the highest number of parameters model as well for your use case as well. Sometimes like smaller model, open source model actually make the work. So as long as you combine those small models as well with your own data, and that's where this is, as mentioned, is going to drive value for your company as well. And here, I mean, what I wanted to show is that generative AI applications are still applications. So you still need operational databases to support the user experience as well. And for all those interactions, your, let's say, large model is going to have with your own data as well. And this is, for example, where analytics and data lakes are key because that's where you are going to accumulate your domain specific data. And these are tools, for example, that you're going to use to explore your data and to understand how to leverage it as well. Yes, I want to make just a last comment here as well. So,
Okay.
and this is, for example, I told you, I mean, this is an area where I see customers struggle as well. And this is actually the message I also would like to give to the audience as well. I recall that once I was in a meeting with the folks of Hugging Face and my customers as well, and they shared a phrase which actually is very true, where they say models are a cost, data is an investment. And that's actually how companies should think about when let's say planning or thinking on building generative AI application. The data is gold for them.
The data is the investment. This is the future, and the model is just the cost. Can you make a specific example?
Sure, of course. I mean, I think I have one example. All right, so let's imagine. I mean, I have this specific example. Imagine you are an online travel agency and you want to leverage generative AI to drive better or create better customer experiences as well. And here, there's example for how you could use your own data and, for example, generative AI to improve, let's say, to enhance the experience you give to your customers as well.
Yeah, because you have a relationship with your customers over years or decades, so you basically know a lot about your customer, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's, for example, the data, that's I told you the why data is gold for you, because in the sense that your customer, they could interact with your application, with your website in like a real like natural language as well. They could just speak English. They could even like just use their voice and to tell your travel agent, um, I would like to, I don't know, in 2 weeks I have like free time. These are the destinations where I would like to go. This is the budget I have. They could give like some specific preferences as well, and then your generative AI application is going to understand that. It's going to, let's say, fetch all this information that it got about your customer as well. And in plain English, let's say it this way, it's going to generate that specific and personalized output to your end user as well. And that, for example, is a very like simple example of how you could leverage or bring generative AI and your own data as well to make something different as well. And as I said earlier, to give you that competitive edge.
Okay, based on this this example from the travel agency, can you walk us through the AWS Generative AI Stack? Finally, now we switch over from the cases to the solution that AWS providing, right?
Regarding the generative AI stack at AWS, I mean, as you can see in this diagram I'm showing, first, I mean, I don't want to overwhelm people as well. Like, I can understand if you're not familiar with AWS, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I don't want you to learn, let's say, by heart all those different names you have there. But what I would like you to understand is that we have solutions for, let's say, you to build generative AI application for different levels of expertise. In the sense that if you see from the really top, where it says applications that leverage LLMs and other foundational models as well. You see as well on the vertical as well, do you see the implementation effort that you would require and what customer, let's say, would need to manage as well. So at the very top, with the least implementation effort and customer, for example, only managing data, you got already built in applications in the sense that you don't need to even build any application. I mean, they're already generative AI application where you just need to plug in your data and that's it. And you're gonna have, for example, an intelligent system like you could start like generating code automatically as well. As mentioned, it's super easy. You don't need any AI expertise for that part as well. Then if we move a little bit, let's say, farther or down that diagram as well, you saw in the middle these tools to build with LLMs and other foundation models as well. Here, the implementation effort is medium as well, because as you can see, I mean, customer, you will not only manage the data, but the application itself. Here, you may not need AI expertise because through the solutions we offer there, for example, I can mention Amazon Bedrock as well. You're going to have access to foundational models from leading AI companies via API. So you don't need to manage any model, you don't need to host them, you don't need to train anything as well. And that's how it's easy for you like to build generative AI application. And if you go like let's say go farther down
You
the
want to do
diagram,
harder work. You wanna do harder work.
exactly. I mean, the implementation effort is higher. You need to manage many things because you will, of course, you're still owner of the data as well. You're going to manage, implement the application itself, but also you may need to, if you need to fine tune a model as well, you also may need to manage, for example, how that model is going to be deployed as well. So that requires much more expertise as well, and it's for those companies who actually have very specific needs as well.
Not
But for
invented here. Not invented here.
no, not exactly, and that's the reason. And actually, what I see is that many, let's say, of our customers, they start at the very top as well. They just try it via APIs as well, where that works for them. Most of the times, it's actually just work for them, and just remaining on that API level as well. For example, if actually that's what Bedrock does, it's offering you like great flexibility for you to build your applications, because this is our, let's say, our core solution for you to build generative AI applications when you don't have that expertise as well. Amazon Bedrock, in case you're not familiar with it, is a fully managed service that makes, as mentioned, high performing foundation models from leading AI companies available to customer via API. You don't need to manage an infrastructure, it's just API call, and you're going to have access to those models as well. And what I'm showing you here, and that's the vision that we have with Bedrock as well, is that we don't believe at AWS that there's going to be like one single model that's going to rule them all. I mean, that decision should be made by you, the customer, as well. It's not up to us to decide this is the best model that you should use for your use case, but it's up to you to try out. And that's something I encourage my customers. Just go try out different models and see what's the ones that works best for you. And for that is that we're partnering, I mean, with many or leading AI companies all over the world, with Cohere, Anthropic, with Meta, Mistral as well. And this list is likely say to keep increasing over time as well.
Why Bedrock? Because you're lying in bed and it rocks.
That actually have no answer to that.
Yeah, can be misleading though. Okay. So yeah, let's and you're not alone, huh? As a startup. You're not like first. You're doing this for many customers already.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I go with like
You're pretty experienced already.
yes, exactly. And that's something I see that our startup customer particularly value from AWS as well. Because what we on AWS, what we try to do is just go way beyond that just being a technology provider, to the point that we become strategic partner for the startup customers as well. So we work shoulder to shoulder with them, because many of those AWS, let's say, members of or team members as well, they actually made the startup experience as well. So they were like, in our team, we have like former founders, CEOs, CTOs, directors of engineering, investor, researchers. So it is highly likely that the same, let's say, struggles you're going through as a startup, someone of us have made the experience as well. So that's why when I engage with the startups, my aim is that they see us as an extension of their team within AWS. So within AWS, we have this customer-centric, long-term vision approach as well, that we believe that our customer success will eventually translate into our own success as well.
What is the things that startups struggles the most based on your team experience?
Where What do I see where startups struggle the most? I could mention maybe like 2, 3 points
Mhm.
that I probably like
Are there so
discussed
many?
previously as
There's
well.
so much.
No, but
Go,
I
go.
think that, let's say, I mean, every startup is unique as well. But definitely, I mean, as because we work with a startup at scale as well, then we identify some patterns as well.
Mhm.
And the first, I think, is already mentioned, is the data itself. I mean, as mentioned, the startups
That just have a mess in the
they just
data.
exactly. I mean, it's their
Like everybody
data
has a mess in
exactly.
the data.
Then that's the point. I mean, why it's important before, let's say, jumping into AI ML as well, to have, like, say, a clear vision, or at least, I mean, like a data strategy as well. And this is, for example, where one of the big reasons why, for example, the cloud is a perfect place for startups to get started with their data related initiatives as well, because it gives you access to scalable, cost efficient, and purpose built data service while remaining, let's say, secure and compliant as well. um, that's one point. For example, the data itself, and the whole data strategy as well. I've also seen cases, I mean, as a second area where I see startup struggle.
Discipline. It's so hard. If you wanna have tidy up your data, you need like discipline in all, the whole
Yeah,
team.
yes, definitely. I think
In,
it comes a lot with
on a daily basis, you always have to if you touch data, you have to be very disciplined.
exactly. And that's I can understand, because as a startup, I mean, when you're just getting started to defining your solution as well, at the beginning, the processes may not be that clear as well. And that's why, for example, you may eventually end up with a mess as well. But that's totally understandable. I mean, and I would say it's way better to do that than just trying to have everything perfect from the very beginning.
Before that, we were talking about speed. So on one hand, you have to be fast. On the other hand, you have to, to clean up everything and put everything in place, very disciplined. It sounds like a contradiction. That's probably also the hard part to manage, right?
Exactly, and that's part of it as well. I believe as well. Uh, the advantage is of startups as well, that many of them, and then they are built, let's say, cloud native. They don't have like that much, let's say, legacy systems. So it's easier for them to start building their solution considering modularity. I think that's something really important to have in mind whenever you have a system, like, for example, you're thinking on a data platform, let's say, to process your data itself, to think like on building it based on modularity as well. So it's easier for you, for example, to replace some parts. If you need to scale one specific part as well, it's easier for you to do it as well. Just avoid like this messing and super tight dependencies as well.
So incumbents might have a huge lake of data, but even if they are disciplined and have it all in place, it's probably not the way you need this data for the next generation of AI. So basically, this is also a window that is open to startups to, that they have their chance to position themselves in the market.
Yeah, true. I think you're right. Mm, Also important to consider that even let's say if your data is you didn't have the best discipline from the very beginning with your data, how you like collect it, manage, store it, or use it as well. That's actually the reason why we're here as well. I mean, when I'm with customers as well, I see that like in different stages as well, and that's basically one of my, let's say, jobs or tasks as well, to support them, to understand, to make them more organized as well, and share with them best practices as well, not only from us on AWS as well, but what we see that it works across, let's say, the whole industry as well, and that's part of my role as well, sharing with them like best practices, sharing with them, for example, how to get started, some sample code as well, and supporting basically to take, for example, that pilot to production at scale as well. Mm, Something like, and actually that's is really important to mention here is that now that we're talking about AI as well, is that on that specific field, to find experts, to find AI talent is really difficult. It's extremely difficult. I see how my customers, they struggle for that because I mean, the labor market is super tight, competitive as well. And whereas more or less education on this field has been like become more accessible as well, startups, they still struggle to onboard AI talent as well. Um, and what I actually like to tell my customers as well is that sometimes, I mean, based on what I show you as well, uh, you don't need to have that AI expertise as well. If you think about again on this, let's say, illustration I show you of AWS Stack and the different levels of, for example, expertise you need to implement something. Sometimes, I mean, if you would like to embed AI or intelligence into your application as well, you don't need that expertise in your company yet. Maybe, for example, a solution such as Bedrock, fully managed service, gives you access to foundational models. That's enough for you to get started as well. And over time, as you, let's say, evolve, you can start like thinking, okay, maybe like bringing or building those capabilities as well. But that's something. It's many of our startups are like surprised when they see how easy it is to get started to build AI application on AWS as well. So as mentioned, we got those API-based solution, Bedrock, Amazon Text Track. That's something I can mention as well, that you can just basically extract information from scanned documents. You don't need to manage any model. And even if you like to build a model on your own as well, we have like solution, for example, Amazon SageMaker Canvas is that allows you to create and, let's say, highly accurate machine learning model with no ML experience. It's just you
Can
don't
you
need
can
to
you
code.
can you at this point talk about the for the startup right now? So we got all these like stacks and approaches and business models. So what would be the next steps with Amazon when they want to start to work with you?
Okay, so there's a checklist they would need to follow. It's a first, I mean, as mentioned, it's really important that they find or they have like a good use case. I mean, the way how they, if they plan to build a generative AI application, it should be like business driven, and not the other way around. The technology is trying to find a solution. That may not work, and
They
that's why,
like
for example,
solution in search of a problem. That's
exactly,
why combinations.
exactly. I mean, this
That's not
they're going.
good.
No, I mean it's not the only way of doing things, but it's much more likely that they're going to succeed if they have like a solid use case as well. Because I mean, the way how they implement it, I mean, through technology, that changes as well. The technology you're using now, it could change in the next 3 6 months as well. So that shouldn't be, but your use case, let's say, should be, as mentioned, a really solid one. And for that, we offer, for example, as you can see here in the slides, if you need some inspiration as well, because that's something sometimes it may not be clear to you, you would like to understand how other companies are doing as well. You can just go to the AWS AI Use Case Explorer as well. So there, as you just could scan the QR code as well, and you can find like many success stories how companies are leveraging AWS for their AI, generative AI use cases as well. So you could use this as inspirations for you, let's say, to spark some new ideas as well. And then, of course, it's like, okay, let's once you have identified a use case, I think the best next thing is just come in contact to us as well. In the, let's say, notes of the description as well, you're going to find my contact as well. Just feel free to drop me an email. You can reach me out on LinkedIn as well. And being honest, I mean, you don't need to be building on AWS. I mean, if you just want to discuss about like your idea or how you believe, like for example, you can implement AI in your company, just feel free. I mean, to drop a message as well. There's no commitment, and actually, I enjoy having these interactions as well with the startup founders, engineering as well.
So thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you very much for showing us all these capabilities of AWS. If you were founding, you yourself, if you were founding a company, what
Mhm.
would you focus on?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I see like very interesting use cases as well, where I'm blown away by like, wow, this is um, revolutionary what I see companies doing. But if I had to get started, if I would need to find like a market that I would like to serve, um, I would go for those spaces where imperfection is sufficient to solve a problem. And what I mean by imperfection is that at one end of the spectrum, you got AI-driven use cases like autonomous vehicles, for example, where there's like tons of data and AI on the field as well. But basically, you probably need 100% perfection for it to work. And as of today, I believe we're still working to get there. It's really like capital intensive as well. And that's one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum, you got those use cases where maybe 50% already makes a difference. Let me give you one example. As I've seen, for example, startup that's leveraging AI to make ships, these logistic ships, for that going through the ocean, to become much more fuel efficient. So they basically are using AI to tell them how to steer the ship and which direction to go. And eventually they're going to get to their destination, but using an optimized route given by AI. And this lets them save up to 10% less fuel. And that 10% of fuel saving translating to about $450K per ship per year. And that's already a good use case. It doesn't have to be like perfect as well, but it already like gives you an understanding of you don't need to go to that end of the spectrum as well. If you explore different use cases, you're going to find like many opportunities where AI can be disrupted as well. So that's the kind of, for example, niche where I would go in this case.
Okay. So, and then last but not least, so we will see there's different data or famous people who claiming something about what kind of jobs will be replaced by AI. Okay. So, for instance, Jensen Wang is CEO of NVIDIA, is saying you don't need to studying software engineering anymore because this will be taken over by AI. So, when you're a parent, what kind what field of studies would you recommend to your kids that they are prepared for the future?
Hmm. You're putting me in a parental position where I'm not there yet, but I'm gonna try, let's say, to think about it. Mm, I actually, what I would first, I mean, I would encourage my kids just to follow what they want to do, but to have like flexibility in their mind, in the sense that, I mean, the space or the world, let's say, is changing so rapidly as well that you just cannot get stuck on one specific like branch of studies that you did. I made experience, I started my career in sales as well. And that's something I somehow I was always curious about, let's say, learning new things, doing something more technical as well. And then years later, I'm at a place that I wouldn't have even have thought about it. Like when if you would have asked me this thing, like I don't know, a few years ago as well. So and that's just something that I would like say teach to my kids. Just okay, if you have like a specific interest and passion, go for it, but please like remain flexible as well and have this ability or curiosity to learn new things as well.
Thank you very much, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Fabian.
That was fun. And yeah, I learned a lot as well. And yeah, I can, every day, every conversation like this, I can better connect the dots. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation, for the previous invitation as well. And nothing, I mean, let's just stay in contact. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have like really interesting collaboration in the future as well. Nice to be here as well. And then yeah, great to see your audience as well. Thank you. Leverage it and create. Oh man, no. I mean, it sounds great in my head, but it's
Yes.
yeah, because I'm just like speaking too much. I mean, instead of just like making this example, because I
I
want to
mean, we
close
are
this.
not Bloomberg, we're not Bloomberg TV. So